Hello and welcome back to the Renewed Homestead. Today we are going to be talking about a free resource on your property that you should definitely be using. Let's get into it. All right, so what are we talking about today? We're talking about leaves.
Leaves.
Which most people have access to, and it is a free resource. Now, one of the great things about leaves is you can find them almost anywhere. So if you live on a property that doesn't have a lot of trees, you can go down to a park near you. Most city parks have trees. You can rake up those leaves, take them with you. You can also go to a neighbor's house and ask them if you can have their leaves. So it's a free resource, and there are a lot of benefits to utilizing leaves. Now, there's three typical ways that you can use them. You can use them as a compost, you can use them as a mold, and you can use them as a mulch. Now, one of the great things about utilizing leaves is there are some studies that show that up to 80% of the nutrients that are in a tree are in their leaves. So they fall to the ground and then they are actually absorbed into the soil, and it actually feeds the soil and it adds humus to the soil. Now, what's the benefit there? Well, you're going to bring nutrients into the soil. You're also going to help retain those nutrients. And more than that, you're going to actually help retain the moisture. Now, one of the ways that we experience this and that we can see this in nature is in a forest. And throughout our forest, you'll see that the leaves fall. You'll have leaves, you'll have pine needles. Obviously, the pests that run through will put nutrients down through their manure. And then that gets brought back into the soil. And then next year, you've got another layer on top and another layer on top. So it's really a way that we can see permaculture in action and nature utilizing nature. So next time you walk through a forest or next time you see a forest, look at the ground, look at all the nutrients that are there that are just absorbed into the soil. And it's a really great way. It's actually one of the main components of permaculture. It shows us how to utilize those leaves and how to utilize those nutrients to benefit your soil. Now, today we'll show you we're actually creating a leaf mold. Now, a leaf mold's really easy. All it is taking a bunch of leaves, putting them in a pile. Now, for us, we're going to actually put them in a round container of chicken wire, and the chicken wire is going to allow that oxygen to get through so that it can get air. Now, leaf mold can take about a year up to 3 years, depending on the size of the leaves that you're using. Now, you can leave leaves whole. That will just take longer to break down. And if you want to make it go for about a year or so, then break up the leaves, make them smaller. Now, for us, we have a lawnmower that we utilized. Sorry, I'm going to get a little more comfortable here. We have a lawnmower that we utilize, that we go through. We have several acres. So we have a sweeper on the back. We gather those leaves and we put them in a pile. Now, part of the issue was the actual cutting part of the lawnmower, the deck belt busted. So that's supposed to come in today, but I wasn't able to actually break up those leaves and make them smaller. So we actually laid out a whole bunch here in a pile, and we allowed the chickenness of the chicken, as Joel Salatin would say, to break up those leaves over a few days and make them smaller. So we're going to be putting these leaves in that container, and I'll show you some of that today. And then we're just going to let it sit. Now, one of the things you want to do for your homestead or for your garden is to plan ahead. That's why we do compost. That's why we do leaf molds. Now, another way that we're utilizing this is mulch. Now, when we put the pond in, the big pond in the front of our property, they had to do earthworks and they had to dig up some of the grass. So we had to put some grass seed down. Now, what you can do is actually break up those leaves, make them small so that water and oxygen and everything can still get through, and then put them on that area to act as mulch. So it'll act as a living mulch. You can also do the same thing in your garden. So there are so many uses to leaves. And remember when we talked about all those nutrients that are from the tree that are in the leaves? Well, all of that's going to go back into the soil, kind of like a bioaccumulator. So you can utilize several different resources on your property. Now, another thing that's great about leaves is you can actually put them in a pile. And sometimes it's really great to rake the leaves around the bottom of your trees and leave them just like you would in a forest. It's amazing for the tree. It's amazing for the soil underneath. But it will also give a habitat for beneficial insects, and nature around your property. I know squirrels can utilize it. I believe rabbits can use it. All kinds of insects and mycorrhiza can utilize it. And that's part of that breakdown in the forest, is that it not only does it feed the soil, but it also feeds nature around it. And then what did we talk about before? Then you have the manure from those insects. You have the manure from those animals that are utilizing that as a home. And then that's also breaking down into the soil. So there are many uses. So I highly encourage you. We're in fall right now. Leaves are falling everywhere. Pick those up, take them back to your property, take them back to your homestead. Now, when you're utilizing them as a compost, the leaves are going to be a carbon. Think of them as brown. Remember, in compost, you have brown components and you have green components. So for us, what we're actually using, and we actually have my roosters down here. Hi, Guy. So when you are actually utilizing compost, you want a mixture of browns and greens. Now, your greens are going to typically be like grass clippings, anything that you think of as green, even though like coffee grounds can be considered a green because it's high in nitrogen. So the carbon are going to be your browns, the greens are going to be your nitrogens. And we have a lot of straw and manure from our chickens, so we utilize that and compost it. But we also have a lot of grass clippings, because right now we have the sheep, but we don't have a lot of animals on our property, a lot of ruminant animals yet, so we can't possibly keep up with the amount of grass that's growing on our property. Now, praying very soon that we're going to have cows. We just need to get the fencing around the rest of our upper pasture. And then once that's done, we'll get cows, and then we'll put some in our lower pasture as well. So, and we'll be moving them around doing regenerative agriculture and moving them from paddock to paddock to make sure everything can recover, make sure we're not overgrazing anything. But right now we don't have them. We just have the sheep, and they're not eating enough. So we have had to mow the lower pasture here, and we have a lot of grass clippings. So I have been taking the grass clippings along with scraps from our kitchen and the leaves and making compost with it. Now, we are still relatively new to compost. We started doing compost several months ago. We have gotten a lot better. But if you want to look at an amazing channel that gives you really great tips to creating hot compost, and then even talking about cold compost, I want you to take a look at Permapastures Farm. You can go to YouTube and put Permapastures Farm compost in the search area, and it will come up, and they have some amazing videos on compost. So leaves are also a great way to utilize compost. Now, again, when you're composting, you can leave the leaves whole. It'll just take a little bit longer to break down. Your best bet is to take those leaves and try to make them into smaller pieces. And then that way, that will actually help all the mycorrhiza and the bacteria and everything that's in that compost, help everything break down. Otherwise, it could take a lot longer. So for us, we're doing this leaf mold. We know it's probably going to take about a year, and that's okay. That's our plan, is to actually have several compost piles, have a leaf mold going, so that way in a year or so we can come back, we can utilize that for our garden, we can utilize that for our fruit trees. And then we'll also have the compost piles, and I think we have 8 compost piles going right now because of the chickens, and we've been able to utilize the grass clippings. So we've got straw in both the chickens in our barn and the chickens that are in the chicken coop. We have not had time to, unfortunately, make the portable chicken coop. We're hopefully going to do that soon and get the chickens up with the sheep, so that the sheep will run through first, and then we'll put the chickens behind them. And that just helps control parasites. It helps put the manure. Thank you. And it helps break that manure down and break it down into the soil. So hopefully we'll be able to build that temporary chicken tractor soon. But we have 2 sets of chickens, one that'll be in the field and one that we typically use for our eggs, that are in zone 1. And if you know permaculture, there's different zones. Zone 1 is an area that you're going to be utilizing a lot. So we grab eggs every day. Apparently he wants you to know he's here. So we can utilize all that straw from the barn, from the chicken coop, and we're actually going to be utilizing, Ben's got the sawmill, so we're going to actually be utilizing the wood chips once he's able to get that going. I'm actually going to be starting to use wood chips so that we can, again, utilize a free resource on our property. But we have so much straw and manure coming through that I'm actually utilizing grass clippings in that compost, and then we've also got a combination of grass clippings and leaves compost piles as well. So as you can see, we're utilizing a lot of resources on our property that don't cost us a thing. So I highly encourage you to do the same. You can look up leaf mold. You can look up, composting with leaves. You can also look up leaf mulching. But just remember, what does the forest do? How does the forest feed itself? How does the forest get nutrients down into that soil? And it's leaves. Leaves are an amazing resource. So I'll show you some of the leaf mold that we're making. Okay, now with leaf mold, you want to focus on 3 things. First, you want to make sure there is plenty of airflow, which is one of the reasons why we are using chicken wire. You want to make sure that there is some water, because the bacteria that's needed to break everything down will actually need water. It's the same with compost. And then you want shade. So we're actually putting it on the side of our barn here that doesn't get a lot of sun. Now, if you don't have an area, like a shady area like we do near the barn, a lot of people will do a narrower cage, and then they will actually put it under a tree. That is perfectly fine and acceptable. So remember the 3 components: air, water, shade. And right now we're going to put a little bit of water because this is partway full, and then we'll go ahead and add some more leaves to it. Now we do not have a hose down here at the barn yet, but we do have water that's diverted from the creek, and then it goes back out to the creek. So I'm just going to fill this bucket. We'll add a little bit of water, and then we'll go ahead and add more leaves. Now, one thing you can also do is, if you have black plastic trash bags, you can actually put leaves in the black trash bag, and then you can poke holes in the trash bag, and then just open up the bag a little bit, add some water, and then seal it back up. Now, you want to make sure there's holes on both sides of that trash bag, but that is an option. We try not to use too much plastic on the homestead. I mean, sometimes that's inevitable, but we prefer this way. But if you do have a neighbor that's got a bunch of bags that they give you, and you don't have the option for something like this, poke holes in the bag, put a little bit of water, done. All right, so one caveat I want to mention about grass clippings. You want to make sure that the grass clippings you are using are safe. Many people put chemicals on their lawns. They use it for weed control. You do not want that in your compost pile. So grass clippings can be a great resource for compost. Just make sure that it is safe and it does not have chemicals in it. All right, so as you can see, the leaf mold is done. So we're going to let that sit. Now, normally I would water the top, but we are supposed to get a decent amount of rain tomorrow, so I'm not going to worry about that today. But typically you would want to put some water on the top to feed that bacteria to start breaking everything down. We have a lot of leaves on the property, so this is just one way that we are utilizing them. We're going to make compost with them. We're going to use them as a mulch. And another way you can use another way you can use leaves is to soak up mud. Now, we have a lot of mud on the property from all the work that we've been doing. Now, last year we put in the shop, so we still have some areas that the grass hasn't grown up in. Now, in that area, we're going to use leaves and rotten hay to bring those nutrients back into the soil. And then we also have a lot of bare area from where we put in the pond. So we did put grass seed down. We're utilizing the leaves as a mulch there. But we have a small area where we keep the dogs. Now, a lot of times dogs run the property when we're out with them, but when we are not out with them, we want to keep them contained, and that area gets muddy, especially when it rains. So we put leaves in that area and it soaks up that mud and just keeps the area cleaner and keeps the dogs from getting really muddy. So many uses for leaves. So let me know in the comment section if you knew about these uses, if you've been using leaves on your property. And if you haven't, are you going to use them this fall? So again, I hope you learned something. We really appreciate you. Again, leave a comment. Don't forget to subscribe and like the video. And we hope you have a good day. God bless you and your family.